This challenge, Ghost in the CGC, is very interesting because the author intentionally wrote it to be very difficult to patch.
Yeah, and it's got a good name too, of course. A little Ghost in the Shell code or Ghost in the Shell reference, that never hurts either. But
so what we're seeing is when every team, when they submit their replacement here, the ones that are trying, it's taken them a few rounds to figure out that didn't work. Like they're flatlined still, their availability is down. In this case, it's because they're not able to respond to the polls properly.
Yeah, it sort of had there were a couple challenges that had this kind of internal protection mechanism. They were akin to sort of DRM or anti-reverse engineering techniques where there's self-protecting against modification. A human might still be able to do it. If you see there's a checksum and you can patch up the checksum, you can absolutely do it. But clearly something that would be very hard for an automated system to arbitrarily detect the checksum, patch it, and put it in place. But what they should have figured out, though, yeah, is that maybe patching was a bad idea, right? They can test things. One of the things we haven't talked about is the round zero, right? The first round of every lifespan of a challenge set, you only have polls because you can't throw a POV until round one of the sort of the lifespan. And so during that round, you can know that everything from there is a poll, and you can replay that traffic against any kind of patch you have and make sure you get the expected back behavior.
Right, so what I'm noticing here is that there's actually a lot of teams that didn't even attempt to patch.
Right.
And that is maybe because they had some internal testing going on. They were actually able to tell their patch would fail and they didn't ever deploy it at all.
Either they were dead in the water like Mayhem at this point, or they had some analysis, or maybe they just decided they didn't have a patch. But for whatever reason, not patching was absolutely the right strategy for this particular challenge and the other one like it. It is also good to see who has sort of the solving capability. In some cases, if teams can patch before everyone else can get a POV out, maybe they got a POV but very late, we couldn't have seen it. Well, here's when you can't patch very easily, and so we do get to see everyone show their POVing ability.
Yeah, and you talked about those protection mechanisms. We have a capture of it here. What we're actually looking at is the algorithm that they're using to actually hash,
validate the,
hash the text section of the program. So you see up here, they have a for loop. They're just going through and reading the text section of the binary, and then they are checking it against an expected hash.
Of course, that's not stored in the text segment because it's a little tricky to put a checksum inside of itself, the checksum's itself. But
yeah, it obviously has to be marked up after the fact.
Yeah, so they put that in the data segment. They match that value, and then they
and if it's not correct, the program terminates.
Just terminates immediately. Yeah.
So
that'll definitely result in a zero availability score. If it
and like you
always
said,
exists.
I don't feel like that would be that difficult for a human reverse engineer kind of identify. You could even probably just knock out of this function
Never
entirely
call that
because
function.
it doesn't have any other
Right.
effect.
Isn't
it's
going
just
to impact.
checking. But the machines were not able to figure this one out.
Yeah. Or maybe the ones that did are the ones that chose not to patch it correctly. So, but they certainly weren't able to patch around it.
Yeah, nobody had a workaround.
Looking around 80 now, we're going to see what the action is like. So we just talked about Ghost in the CGC. We know they had trouble patching with that. And I also even mentioned that isn't the only one. So we'll see some other ones coming up like that too.
So we see some scoring happening here. This is on the Trust Platform Module challenge. And we see both Xandra and Galactica seem to have found this POV. This challenge has been in play for 2 rounds now. And at least 2 teams scoring on it, although they're not going to realize these points right now because they're also down for patching.
But that's not the worst strategy, right? Actually, I'm okay with that in this instance, that they're throwing their POV the second that they know about it because they are decreasing their opponent's security scores. And in this case, they were right. One of their opponents was actually throwing a POV against them.
Yeah, so patching
from
was a
that
good move.
perspective, patching was a good move.
Definitely. So this challenge, just like Ghost in the CGC, it has a protection mechanism. It's going to hash part of the binary. But unlike Ghost in the CGC, this hash is actually going to be calculated dynamically at runtime. So we're going to see right down here, the return value of this function is going to send back the hash, and that's actually part of the standard service poll.
Oh, so it's the network protocol, and you'd have to know what the right value was to return.
Absolutely. So this one's much harder to get around. Now, the machines weren't able to get around the other one either.
Yeah, unlikely they're going to figure this one out. So then we'd expect to see sort of the same kind of behavior where they're going to patch, fail, and the smarter ones will just never even patch in the first place.